Here we are on Independence Day weekend. Let me just take a minute to share some things I've been thinking about as we get ready to celebrate our independence. Because unlike Michelle Obama, who wasn't proud of this country until her husband was winning his party's nomination, I love this country and have always been extremely proud of it. Never has there been a better nation on the face of this earth. And I've always believed that our Constitution was divinely inspired. That doesn't mean that we are or have ever been a perfect nation. We're not, and everybody knows it. But those who constantly focus on the mistakes we've made, especially the really huge mistakes we've made, like racism and slavery, those are nearly always the same people who belong to the political party that supported and defended racism and slavery for virtually all of that party's existence. Democrats. Republicans ended slavery. Republicans brought about the end of Jim Crow. Republicans pushed for the civil rights bills in the 50s and 60s. Democrats fought it every step of the way. Every step of the way. But more important than pointing a finger at those who've disparaged our country is celebrating for what it stood for over the past 245 years. It's been a beacon of hope and liberty for hundreds of millions of people. When tragedies occur in the world, who's always there first? America, always. It is the most generous nation in the world by far, both based on what the government gives out to other countries in the form of aid and what the private citizens give in the form of charitable contributions. It has rescued the world from oppression on multiple occasions. It's offered refuge to the poor and oppressed everywhere. When situations arise that are embarrassing to us, we air them out for everybody to see. Unlike Russia or China, our scandals and shortcomings are opened up for the whole world to view. And the left has tried desperately to diminish what this nation has done. They've alleged that racism was built into the very fabric of this nation. And nothing could be further from the truth. Race wasn't even mentioned in the United States Constitution. It's not so much as mentioned. Some will ignorantly claim that the 3/5 clause in the document was about assigning worth to non-free people in the colonies. But as all thinking, informed people know, counting slaves, who were not referred to that way in the Constitution, by the way, counting them as less than one person was only about limiting the number of representatives the South would have in Congress. And as a result, limiting the power of the Southern colonies so that eventually we'd be able to defeat and end slavery. From the ratification of the Bill of Rights to the Emancipation Proclamation was a total of 72 years. So from the foundation of this nation to the official end of slavery, all happened in under a century in this country, meaning that the evil of subjecting men and women to being slaves was ended faster here than in any other nation on earth. Now, granted, allowing slavery for 1 minute was too long. No human being should ever have been treated that way. And yes, many of our founders did struggle with slavery themselves. But the institution had been embedded so deeply into our civilization by the British that the nation had become dependent upon it. And it took some time to untangle that. To keep the Union together and to untangle it, it was a struggle. And it took time, and it took blood and treasure. But by 1808, the slave trade was stopped here. And by 1863, again, with the blood of 600,000 Americans, we were finally able to rid the nation of that blight on our country. Have there been other problems since our founding? Sure. And we should teach our children what those problems were and are so that they'll be able to avoid them when they take over the governance of this country in the future. But they also need to know about the goodness and the greatness of this country and its people. And that is something they never get to hear in most school settings and in most settings where they're with their peers. All they hear is the negative. And they need to understand who those 56 men were who gathered together 245 years ago to create the foundation of a country that would change the world forever. They need to know who those men were, really. And they weren't just angry old racist white men. They were men with flaws, yes, but they were men who accomplished something that had never been done before in the history of this planet. Men that had foresight, men that had wisdom. And they were inspired by their maker to put together something that gave all men and all women an equal opportunity to be free and to succeed. What they delivered to us in the end was a nation that doesn't guarantee equal outcomes. They left that part of it up to each of us, depending on our desire and our work ethic and our drive. But the idea was to create opportunity through freedom, to get our government out of our way so that we could go as far as our efforts and skills would take us. And here on this weekend, when we celebrate the beginning of all of this greatness, I think we all need to remember how critical it is that the next generation understands all of this. We have to teach our kids what it is they're inheriting because they don't know from the school system. They don't know it. And we have to teach them the sacrifices and growing pains that we went through to leave them something this precious. So let's not forget that on this 4th of July weekend, it's a perfect opportunity to celebrate our freedom, yes, but also to educate our kids and the generation of the millennials and the Generation Z, I think they're referred to as. We need to remind them of the goodness and greatness of this country.